Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads and must converse is a channel. Thanks for coming back by. Happy Friday. Thanks for being at another live. It's time for it. We've had another week of it. And tonight's going to be something special. Definitely different. You see a change of location. So I'm out here in the dining room. I have my poetry and art bookshelf behind me. Philosophy on here as well, some psychology, things like that, but art mostly. And up top is my William Blake. And you see, here's my boy, Ryan. I'm sorry, Arrona.
Arrona.
My boy Arrona is in the house. Nice to see you, bro.
What is up, YouTube audience or BookTube or whatever you say?
Right. Oh, yeah, a little corner of YouTube. We call it BookTube. So Ryan and I go way back, very, very far back in my life. We've actually been friends since high school.
Freshman year?
That's right.
Yeah, keyboarding class, actually.
1996.
Yeah, Olympics year. So
that's right.
Thank you for sharing this Friday night with us. Usually I'm sure that he takes control, but I do want to let anyone know that is interested in, shall we say, more risque content, then you might head over to our podcast and ignore the rant. Now, that is only if you are not the type to be offended regularly. Otherwise, buckle up.
So. Right. So my boy Ryan Arrona here is part of a podcast. It's really cool. Check it out. I'll leave a description link in the description box. So hey Nick, Greg is in the house. Another bibliophile reads. Nick Voro, always happy Friday. Thanks for coming by.
What's up, Nick?
Ineffable, always cool to see you, brother. And so Ryan knows, what I do on my channel and all that kind of thing. And Ryan has been a friend who is a reader, the lion's share of my life. So
I say you or Noah is definitely more prolific as far as reading goes, but I do enjoy it.
Right on. Hey, Una, Codex Cantina is calling out the band shirts.
Oh, so yeah,
311 and Pink Floyd representation. We didn't plan that. We're just, the same kind of dudes.
Yeah, and plus, hey, 311 Day is only a month hence, so
that's right. Hey, Tyler, the Falcon is in the house. Happy Friday. And yeah, you got to collab in-house. You know what I mean? Not through Zoom or StreamYard or something, right? Let's just say hey to everybody in the house. Tom LA Books here. Lady Jane Books, nice to see you. Always awesome. PG, I ain't finna read that. I like your little meme that you just put out on Instagram, man. That was really funny. And I'd love to see regular content from you. Your content is always worth it whenever you do drop it. So no worries. I don't think that it matters too much. Consistency matters, but you could be once a month and even still maintain that level of consistency and get followers. It's about the content.
Try to set the expectation. Just if your fans are expecting it weekly, do it weekly. But if you're going to tell them it's going to be intermittent, then do it whenever.
Right. PG and I are reading a book now. Just about to start it. I haven't started it yet. The Tenant by Roland. He's an outsider writer, very avant-garde. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it has a twist. It's this kind of thing that nobody has ever told me the ending, and people are very careful about talking about the story when they are doing reviews of it. And it just sounds great. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Oh yeah, anything with a twist, I'm down for.
Trish, finally Friday. That's what I'm talking about, right? Thanks for coming by.
Always awesome. Nick has already called us legendary. So
did he?
I appreciate that.
Did he? Hey, Nick is a great guy. Yeah. Idget Reads and Rambles. That's Quentin up in Canada. He does a lot of cool content, music and books.
Canadians are actually one of our biggest draws on Ignore the Rant. So nice. Thank you.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Nick saying hey. Everybody cool. Hey, Puff Pet's in the house. Happy Friday. Thanks for coming by. So maybe Ryan, you want to give us a little background as to your reading and like where you came into it, because since this is book content and then we'll get into what we're going to jump into tonight. I'll definitely share what I've been reading so far. I've been reading a lot.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to tell me that. I already know that.
Hey, Christina, happy Friday. Yes. And Book Time with Ryan, happy Friday. And Livy at Recognitions Book Club, thanks for coming by, for sure. All right, so, I mean, we're ready to start. Like,
as far as my history goes,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, I was very slow developing as far as even my education went. So whereas most kids, when we started first grade, were able to read, I had literally no understanding of how to read.
Damn.
And so, but by the end of my, year one, I was actually reading up to Dickens.
Nice.
And so I used to love got Oliver Twist and
nice.
Great Expectations were some of my favorite things. Then, I rolled over into R.L. Stein and all the, kiddie stuff from back then.
Sure.
But then what really turned the corner was definitely Stephen King.
Nice.
And, I think you're the one who made me interested in starting to read Stephen King.
Well, I mean, he's such a, an imposing figure, literally speaking. And like, he is a gateway writer. At this point, who that watches BookTube or creates content has not read Stephen King? Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's without,
or at least is
without
familiar.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, hey, Book Nick. Nice to see you for sure. I read another Brown again. I got thoughts, that's for sure. Hey, Alexa. Alexa's a friend from Serbia.
Oh, nice, Alexa.
All the way from Serbia. And we got Christina in the house. She's in Portugal.
Sweet.
Dude, it's all over, man. Thank you guys for staying up. Who it's like, late at night.
What, this guy is international?
I'm international, baby.
Nice. I like it.
So Lady Jane there says Stephen King's a favorite. He got me back into reading after I finished school, for sure. He's somebody that there's the storytelling does get you back into reading. I mean, it jumpstarts reading. This kind of thing. I have a experience in my life where I really kicked the gas pedal in reading when I read the Dune series by Frank Herbert. It's 14 books that I read, and I read it over the period of like maybe 6 months. I wasn't keeping track or nothing. I don't know. But after that, I was like, man, I can read anything, right?
Yeah.
Because you read so much. And Stephen King's like that because he writes big books, and you might read a big tome and be like, but it's so readable. And then you're like, wait a second, I can read big books. I can do whatever I want. And so it breaks you into reading in a lot of different ways.
It's kind of, to me, I liken it to those, back when 2-hour movies became the norm. Whereas, like, it just didn't seem usual that you would sit through one and be like, oh, God. But there were certain movies where it didn't feel that way.
Right.
And Stephen King can do that, where 1,000 pages feels like, anyone else's 300 or 400 pages.
Sure.
And you just don't want it to end.
Right. Case in point, 11/22/63.
In the most, recent iterations of his writing, this is the best. I mean, actually, I would rank it in his top 5 regardless of,
Dude, it's loved. I mean, it's lauded by those that have read it and read a lot of Stephen King. So I think it merits that for sure.
And I've had people who don't appreciate horror that have read that book because it's very much not that. I mean, if anything, it's a little bit of a thriller.
Yeah.
And sure, they have the aspect of the husband, of his love interest or ex-husband, or I don't think it's a husband.
It is. It's an ex-husband.
Ex-husband.
Of the female that he meets back in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a thriller. It's very violent. This book 11/22/63 is violent, and that's where it comes through the kind of tension and this dread. There is some kind of Stephen King-ish weirdness. I like how Stephen King always gives even the hero or the heroine an impediment. always gives them something. I remember when Eddie in the Dark Tower series like smacks his head on the door when they do that ritual and they send him through one of these magic doors, one of these doors, and he smacks his head on the thing as he's going through it, and then you got to deal with that, you know. Or Roland through entire drawing of the three, right? On the verge of death.
Well, I
that
mean,
kind of stuff always is great for storytelling.
The only individual in that book who was prepared for what was coming would have been Jake. Because, I mean, Susanna and Eddie both are, I mean, they're thrown into this. And I'm hard pressed to decide who would have been more stressed, Eddie or it was Odetta, I think, when he picked up Susanna.
Right. And I love the Dark Tower. We'll get into the Dark Tower a little bit more later, maybe. Knitting books, etc. That's Christina says she's on book 5 of the Dark Tower now. And I know Una and Crypto at the Codex Cantina over there that y'all are going through the Dark Tower as well. Haven't got to the end yet, none of them, but they're there. And
we will try not to spoil anything.
I'll never spoil it.
Yeah. No.
I never ever do it. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear people's gateway writer, you know, who kind of really got you into writing, as thinking and knowing that, wow, through storytelling something can be done that's unique to the medium and like something worth it, you know, and why we love books and storytelling and all that kind of thing. Kurt Vonnegut, for sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Very cool. On Writing is an amazing book, Nick. And yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
Because it's one that we got to talk about, because an essential writing book, one of the best on writing books that I've ever read. And I think it's a testament to having a great writer giving you the critique, giving you the literary criticism, literary analysis kind of thing.
Yeah.
A second, and I wouldn't say a second because I haven't read the whole thing. But this one I have read the whole thing. But with Borges on Writing, I haven't read the whole thing, but it's masterful. And you want a writer giving you that, right?
Now this, I mean, the first half of it is his life, and that's all he talks about. I love it. You know, I loved getting to know more of that aspect. But then he also, in the second half, gets to show you, you know, anybody can do this kind of thing, where he does show a draft where it's like, dude, look, where my editor just completely scraps this stuff and that stuff and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now, something that I don't know if you were familiar with this when I told you the story earlier on tonight, but if you're not familiar with this book, they do actually discuss that Stephen King himself pretty much trashed Carrie. You know, he was not going to turn it in. He was not going to release it. Right. He thought it was terrible. And Tabitha fishes it out of the trash and ends up reading it and comes to him and goes, this is amazing. You've got a great story going here. The only thing that I would probably say is maybe the female voices could use some work, obviously. But I can help you with that. Other than that, don't throw this out. Right. You've got an amazing product.
And it was. And it turned out to be the thing. And Tabitha King stuck with him the whole time. It's very cool. I mean, they go back all the way to college together. You know, it's an amazing story, Stephen King's whole thing. I want to touch on, let's get caught up a little bit. Emily says I know her favorite one, and I do, but I don't have it sitting out here on the table. So baby, she's like in the living room. It's somewhere on that shelf, right? It's got to be on that shelf. That's the Stephen King, where all the Stephen King was. I don't know why.
What is it?
It's Eyes of the Dragon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say, that's one of the few that I've not read.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's freaking great. And you see the Man in Black, you see Randall Flagg. You meet him. So that's like actually maybe the first time that Randall Flagg was in any of his stuff, right? You know?
Wow.
So Tyler the Falcon says he read The Stand and thought that it qualified him to read Infinite Jest. Boy, was he wrong.
I've not read Infinite Jest, but I've heard enough about it to know that's not a comparison.
That's right. That's right.
Length maybe, but definitely not as far as level of reading.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, just the it's a monolith. Infinite Justice is completely unbelievable.
I don't know if this is accurate. Maybe this person was, blowing smoke a little bit when they said this about me, but something that you have maybe mentioned already, and I just don't remember, is I'm also an aspiring writer as well, and so one of the few things I've written, one of the few people who have actually had the chance to read it compared me to the guy that wrote Infinite Jest. So I don't know if that's accurate or not. She seemed to think it was a compliment, so I'll take it as such.
Right.
But,
it's a compliment.
Yeah.
I mean, I love David Foster Wallace. I love his writing.
Mhm.
Infinite Jest is a different animal. Is a whole a thing unto itself. I would never say that I didn't like it,
Mhm.
but it is a product of its time, and it might be something that what's the purpose of this thing. But with David Foster Wallace's writing, there's so much that's so worth it. I mean, it's wonderful stuff. He was really, really strong in short stories, and I don't know about. I mean, strong at essays and journalism and that kind of thing. The books is just, and Broom of the System is one of his novels. It's the funniest book that I've ever read.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And Infinite Jest is like the saddest book that I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's totally on the level, but I mean,
so
Infinite Jest is
in his own way, he's kind
that.
of Palahniuk, just can go from one genre to the other just seamlessly without thinking about it.
No, I think he overthought everything. Actually,
David Foster Wallace,
yeah, and just went and went.
Because Palahniuk, I would not say that.
No,
he's just that crazy on his own.
Right. Yeah, and he might kind of delve into a character and things like this. I like Palahniuk's process as far as his writing. There's a lot of that behind the scenes kind of stuff in some of the movies adaptations, the special stuff on those. You can see Palahniuk talking about his inspiration for writing things like Fight Club and Choke.
One of my favorite actually things I heard him talk about, and maybe since this is somewhat of a family channel, I won't actually say the quotes, but the line in the movie Fight Club is I haven't felt that way since grade school or something like that. And actually in the book, because what happened, the studio wanted to nix that line. They're like, hell no, that's not what we're gonna let be in this movie.
Right.
And then he reads them the original line, and he goes, how about this? And it's basically, it'll be an honor to have an abortion for you, or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, but Palahniuk's all about that shock value.
Yeah.
But Stephen King is kind of like that too. Hey, Conrob, want to say, hey, happy Friday for sure. And Nancy in the house, Moonpalm, thank you for coming by. And I wish Pavio was here. Pavio is a content creator that has this kind of love-hate relationship with Palahniuk. I don't know what it all consists of, but I'd love to hear it because I've read so much Palahniuk. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But let's stick on Stephen King for a bit. You talked about Carrie. Everybody knows Carrie. It's a phenomenon at this point.
Just imagine how many bad movies have been made, but the first one that was optioned was the classic.
Right.
I mean, almost.
Right.
We can all, I'm sure, bring up our favorites, but
what is your favorite then? Adaptation. I mean, there's so many. How do you even? It's like when I think about King adaptations, I mean, there's so many. It's ridiculous. Of course, the number one is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
it's a number one movie across the board. It's like top 10 movies. I like no matter what. I mean, like that originally is an idea that came up in Stephen King's head.
Yeah. Oh, and I love the fact. I mean, you can ask 9 out of 10 people, and they won't realize that Stephen King had anything to do with it. And so, I mean, I love blowing people's mind with that because everybody, has this idea that he's only horror and that's all that he does. And it's like, no, you could not be further from the truth on that. So, no, I mean, Shawshank was definitely up there for me. But, honestly, now this requires a little bit of backstory. So the first story I read was Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
Now, I might get some
horrifying movie that.
See, I might get the booze out of some of your fans here. I hated Pet Cemetery.
To read it?
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's my least favorite Stephen King
man.
book. Maybe next to what is Tom Gordon? The girl who loved Tom Gordon.
Yeah.
Those two are kind of my least favorite. Now, it's not because it's not a good book. I don't want to, say that. I think the biggest strength, and I've told you that from my standpoint with King, is he gets you so connected to his characters.
Right.
That, through the rest of the story, everything that's horrifying is an extension of the character that's experiencing it.
Right.
So I didn't grow to care about hardly any of the characters because I'm sitting there.
And it's a father.
Yeah.
It's a father in Pet Cemetery. That's the thing. And I read it when I was a young reader, but it definitely was one of the most horrifying books that I ever read. When I read it, just the scene where he's digging up the grave. It's so over the top.
Putting Gage in.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh God, what is happening here? Oh, Pet Cemetery. We'll show it just because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So anything we talk about, just grab it if it's in front of you, bro.
Sure.
So Pet Cemeteries. This is one that everybody knows because it's been adapted as well. But and I loved the 80s Pet Cemetery, sure. But one of my favorite, and maybe Shawshank's great. But I loved Sleepwalkers. Did you ever see that?
I did. And actually, it was one of the few it's one of those movies that I did not realize that other than La Bamba that I had heard the song Sleepwalk. It is, same title.
Right.
Which I love that dichotomy of certain songs where in one place it just sounds beautiful and kind of, uplifting, but in a totally different atmosphere, just creepy as hell.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's definitely creepy in La Bamba.
Sure.
Because you know what it's leading to.
Right.
But, the song itself just is not itself creepy. It's actually a very beautiful song, but just the way that they present it and the reasons, what's coming when that song comes up in that movie. And so it kind of the same thing with, the song Hurdy Gurdy Man.
Yeah.
When they do that in the movie, about the Son of Sam. I forget the name of it. Somebody can maybe help in the comments there, but Jake Gyllenhaal and whatnot. But in that movie, Hurdy Gurdy Man is leading up to a murder. It's just like it's so intense and scary. And it's like I love that dichotomy with songs. But what I was bringing up about Pet Cemetery is though I think I saw the movie first.
Yeah.
And then I read the book.
Sure.
And
I think I did too.
With the book, my problem was it was so descriptive, and that's great. I have no problems with description. It's just that's most of what it was all the grisly scenes had tons of exposition about this and that. And
there's a lot of gore in Pet Cemetery.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
For sure.
But I hated the main characters. I was just like, are you stupid?
Right.
It's just like, this does not sound like a good idea to anybody.
Right.
I can understand, losing a child, but it's kind of like, have you not seen any movies? Have you not read books? Do you not know what this is probably going to lead to?
Right.
It's an Indian burial ground. What are you doing?
It's like tropish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but Stephen King never shied away from the tropes either. Library policeman.
No. That's.
So Connor here says he had a copy of 4 Past Midnight sitting on the shelf for a while. That's one that you were talking about earlier, 4 Past Midnight. Yeah, it has a Langoliers. And
actually a well done TV movie too.
Yeah.
Even though TV movies are just not good regardless in the most places, but at least that movie, even though the CGI is just, oh my God, terrible.
Right.
But that and It, the first iteration that was on TV.
Oh yeah.
Mwah,
yeah. Nancy's gonna come after you. She says Pet Cemetery is the best work. I don't know what you're talking about. The Shawshank Redemption, Misery, of course, man. Oh, Misery is the book is great. The movie's great. It's just great.
That's up there for one of the best adaptations for sure. Liz Claiborne might be up there for a great adaptation as well, because and I'll be honest, I've not read that book, but the movie version is fantastic.
Nice.
So, but Misery, yes, there has never been a creepier kind of realization what a crazed fan might actually look like.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The book is so horrifying. That sounds really, really good and effable. As far as writing from your own experience, that's the way that it goes. I mean, even if you're writing something completely fiction, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your writing as well, it turns out being semi-autobiographical and some weird kind of author to what you are writing.
Actually, a short story I'm writing right now is directly from my life, pretty much. I mean, there's going to be, the characters are going to be separate, and the events that happen surrounding it are going to be different, but it comes from the life events, that have happened to me. So, yeah.
It's good. Hey, Trish, that's right. The Misery movie rocks. And the movie is great, and the book is so much more hardcore, and it really just sticks with the reader. On writing, there's an awesome story about Misery as well. Do you remember that? When he said he wanted to end Misery?
I forgot that part.
He said he wanted to end it with Annie Wilkes actually killing him and being successful with getting him to write the book to not kill the
was
girl.
She gonna release it as her own?
And well, no, then she was gonna have the actual manuscript that he wrote for her, and she was gonna upholster this book in his skin. I'm serious.
So like the Necronomicon?
It's yeah, just like completely go bat shit crazy, right? I mean, who knows? What's up, SS? Happy Friday. Thanks for coming by. Got my boy Arrona in the house.
Yeah, thanks for everybody tuning in for this.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, think about Kathy Bates around that time. I mean, she had been in Fried Green Tomatoes.
Right.
Just movies where she's this wholesome, maybe a little funny and weird kind of, middle-aged woman, going to just full-on psycho. And dude, it's her career.
You're a dirty birdie. You're a dirty birdie.
See, this
it's so crazy.
So what I had talked to Noah about, I was not much of a TV watcher. And so Hulu, for many of you would probably remember this, released a series called Castle Rock, which was unfortunate enough to be canceled. But in the second season, it's all based on Annie Wilkes had she been around today.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. They did an amazing job. I'm still upset that they canceled that show, because any Stephen King fan, just watching it for 5 minutes, can find so much to appreciate. Even with Easter eggs.
Heck yeah, right. Yeah. And I mean, there's a good amount of Easter eggs in his books now, because he's built this whole universe and this whole mythos now. Am I reading this right? Is Cronenberg and King teaming up and doing another Dead Zone movie? Because I would love to see that.
I have heard Dead Zone's on the palette.
And Cronenberg is doing? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, good Lord. I can't wait. Okay, let's catch up. Full Dark, No Stars is a great short story collection by Stephen King. Have you read it?
No.
Me either. It's a more recent one.
I'll be honest. I mean, for everything that I have read, there's so many still that I have not.
Right.
It is not all at all for lack of wanting. It's just more or less there's so much out there that I want to read that it's hard to get to a writer that is so prolific. I mean, you've got stacks of books here, and this probably accounts for only 1/3 of his entire, probably 1/4 of his entire catalog.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hope I get to the end of my career and say was not that prolific, because it would just, if I'm that prolific, it means I'm having a really tough time mentally, I think.
Right, right. I tell you, it's so much, even when I think about what we're going to talk about, there's no way to talk about everything.
No.
You could go off in so many different tangents. King has done so much over his career.
Well, the second book I read of his, and I think this was what cemented me, and this is not going to be a usual, fan kind of shout out. Not to say that people don't love it, because it is an awesome book. And I think they did make a movie of it, which is it's Desperation, actually. So Desperation, I read probably my actually freshman year.
Right.
And my mom had to come to my room at 2 a.m.
Right.
because I let out a gasp that went into almost a yell.
Right.
Because it's the scene when Collie, the sheriff that is now possessed or whatever, catches them when they're coming into town, and I actually takes them to jail and everything. And so that scene, for whatever reason, just stuck me hard.
Right.
And so that actually created the love that I ended up having for Stephen King.
Yes.
So Desperation itself is a story that's close to my heart. I love it so much. But it to this day, though, it doesn't hold up as one of my favorites.
Right.
But nostalgically, it definitely is.
Yeah, one of my favorites for Stephen King is definitely Eyes of the Dragon. That was an amazing read, and I saw, I like how Stephen King, what he can do is this kind of symbolic, bringing some symbolism into it, doing some symbolic setting, even like Susanna and her Dogen in the Dark Tower.
Yeah,
how she has this mental place that she can go back to. Well, in Eyes of the Dragon, it's the dog, that the dog smells. And Stephen King attributes the different smells to colors, and how the dog is getting, where he needs to be, going through the sewers underneath the city or something. And it's just so cool how he makes you be able to see it, kind of how the dog is smelling his way to, to his owner.
Well, therein lies the reason why so many of the movies that have been adapted are mostly impossible to get a great product, because it's something that only Stephen King can write. And almost bringing that vision to life is always going to be a letdown, because us as readers, just through his amazing language, already have this, imprint in our mind of what we think it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a debate in the ongoing debate in the chat of any Stephen King is The Shining.
Yes.
Right. Is Kubrick did it better, or did Stephen King? Look at my ultra minimalist cover of The Shining. What do you think about that?
That's abridged, isn't it?
That
cannot be unabridged.
It is probably,
because the unabridged is almost 1,300 pages.
I don't think so. It don't say abridged on it. I haven't read this copy. I got it just to have it. 445 pages.
That is abridged. I guarantee that's abridged. Unless I'm thinking
this is old school.
I know The Stand was also up there as well.
The Stand is ridiculous.
Actually, yeah. So actually, I think this was more like 800, 900.
The Shining and Salem's Lot, early King. The Shining, it does feel like a different book than it does a movie. It does have a different feel to it.
And I know Stephen King hated the movie, of course, and it's very much because Jack Torrance's character is so much darker, and there's no redemption for him. And that was something very special about the book. So I do understand where Stephen King's coming from, because though I'm not a purist where I think that everything should be just so, if you do cancel out the soul of what someone's work is, then that would tend to irritate me too. So the soul of the movie was completely different from the book, because in the book, it's very much about seeing through his addictions and the problems that has caused for family and everything else, and then finding the redemption towards the end to where he can save them, even if he can't save himself. Whereas now, but the trouble is, it is such a long book. It to hide all that nuance into a movie that's even 2 hours would have been a task. So the development that Jack Torrance's character would be needing in order for it to follow Stephen King's original plotline would have been extremely troublesome. I don't think it would have been possible. I mean, for any of you who actually saw the recreation that he did on TV, it wasn't that great. It wasn't horrible, but it was no Kubrick.
Nice.
So yeah.
Right. And I mean, you know, I don't hold it. I don't care. And I don't, you know, nail the movie or say, you know, the movie's, I mean, that's an amazing movie.
It is.
And Kubrick's an amazing movie maker. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He
was a tyrant on that movie.
There's certain movies, there's certain movie makers that when they do adaptations, you know, they can do whatever they want, you know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
for sure. And you know, now King is doing his own stuff. I mean, some of the best Stephen King stuff is Green Mile. What an amazing movie! It's up there with Shawshank. I mean, it's just so good.
I want to say it's on a level.
But we said, I mean, and so we'll drop it right here, I guess. Neither of us have read The Green Mile.
No,
just seen the movie. So I have a copy of it. And I told Ryan if he wanted to, we'll commit tonight to Buddy read The Green Mile.
Yes.
So we'll do that, and I'll have it on the end by the end of the year. You know, I mean, we'll pin it down way before then
for sure.
But we'll just throw it out there for now, and when we read it, maybe come back and we'll do some content just digging in The Green Mile.
I'm already digging this appearance, so heck, you know, I would enjoy it.
Maybe do some analysis, book to movie, or just our takes on it, that kind of stuff. Why not? And so, talking about adaptations, then, did you see the adaptation of 11/22/63?
Yeah. So, Franco is a terrible Jake Epping. I mean,
I didn't see him as young as Franco. I didn't see him like Franco. I saw him as more of a, you know, past his prime, maybe. Overweight a little bit, you know, not somebody who is,
I don't know. I was thinking
some pretty boy.
I was thinking more an Americanized Cumberbatch.
Right.
Yeah, is Dominic Cumberbatch? I forget his name, but the Benedict. Sherlock Holmes, Benedict. Yeah. I kind of saw him going more that way, or almost, I guess it would be somewhat, you know, stereotypical if he was more kind of the Harrison Ford-esque kind of thing, you know, because it would just relate too heavily to Indiana Jones. Even though completely different stories. But, I mean, the adventure is real in both of them. So now I will say they did a great job of including what they were including in the you know, TV show. And the recreation of the times was spot on. I just feel like that it was too rushed.
Yeah.
And I did not enjoy the casting.
Sure.
I mean, because with Jake Epping, all the other casting was actually perfect to me. It was just because, you know, he had to be the producer or one of the producers, and he also wanted to be in it. No. He doesn't. I mean, at this point, we all think he's a sexual predator. So, I mean, you know, you don't want that guy playing your freshman year writing teacher, you know? So, I don't know.
Right. Well, I figured they'd have to rush through it. I mean, 11/22/63 is such a beast of a book because there's so much. I mean, you can feel in there how much research he had to have done, how much he had to put together. There's so much information.
Historians have actually commented, and he had commented as well, on how much research he had to do, because all the events that he includes, including the nightclub incident, you know, where he goes into the restaurant to, you know, listen in on the conversation between, it wasn't Oswald at that point. It was the guy who brought him in. is having this meeting at
Right,
this
right.
popular Dallas restaurant, and he's listening into it, and I mean, scenes like that, everything else. I mean, it was very well done as far as what they included. The pacing was terrible. The casting, like I said already.
Damn.
But everything else was in place to make a very good show. And the problem I have, though it was bulky, they did a series.
Right.
How is it?
Would they do 6 hours? What?
Yeah, I think it was 6 episodes.
Right.
And I mean, they could have easily done 9. They could have easily done a second season.
You could do what it takes to do the story the way it needs to be done.
Yeah.
If they wanted to do it. It's just, I mean, dude, there's so much, King gets flack, and he deserves what he gets when he gets it. Because, dude, there's these money grabs, man. What about the Dark Tower movie?
Wouldn't you
Have
take
you seen that? I would probably take it.
Yeah.
But
no. Okay, but here's the problem with Dark Tower. And here's the shame that is Dark Tower.
It's horrible.
So it was originally optioned by Opie himself, Ron Howard. And so he originally had the idea, which would have been perfect. 3 movies, and in between the 3 movies, 2 seasons of a TV show.
Right.
And that was the original plan.
Right.
And so it was being optioned. It looks like they were going forward. And that was like 15 years ago, and then done. And then another 10 years later, they start talking about it again. It looks like he's trying to get it out there. Canceled again.
Right.
Then they have someone who actually pens an amazing script, gets the whole thing together to do 3 movies and then 2 shows. And then Ron Howard gets cold feet. The studio ends up going ahead with it, but without the prior, structure. Which now, here's what I'll say, because a lot of people were very upset about number 1, Idris Elba playing, which, first of all, I
mean, look, that wasn't Roland. That character, I'm not saying that Idris Elba wasn't Roland. They could make Roland could be black, sure. But that character, like his mannerisms and like what he's worried about, how he thinks, how he approaches the world, how he frames his experience, all that's not Roland.
Yeah, Idris Elba's a little too proper. I mean, because the original, inspiration for Roland was Clint Eastwood, was it not?
Right.
Yeah. So it's more gruff kind of.
But also, it was Clint Eastwood that Sergio Leone, right? Sergio Leone, westerns, and then also the Robert Browning poem "Child Roll into the Dark Tower Came."
Mm-hmm.
So it's this kind of Kill Bill figure, like Beatrix in Kill Bill, where she's not going to be stopped.
Yeah,
her and Bill are going to be face to face at the end of that movie.
Now.
And then you watch the whole thing go, and that's how it is with Roland. In that movie, it was like he forgot his
face of his father.
Yeah,
I couldn't watch it. I'll be honest. I never saw it. I knew it was going to be terrible,
bro.
No, and see, here's the thing, because I knew a lot of people had issue already with the fact that it just wasn't the Dark Tower. But, and not to spoil anything, I'm not trying to do that, but there is reason to believe that they could create a series of movies that would still follow the heart of the Dark Tower, yet be a completely different story.
Sure. Right.
And so those who have finished it know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
So
and King would be all about
mm-hmm.
So.
And I would have been down for it. I mean, if nothing else, I will say, even though that struggled, the newer adaptations have been doing a lot better. I mean, the newest Pet Sematary was not, in my opinion, as good as the 80s version, but it still had this great, atmosphere. I feel like the choice of actors, especially with what's his face, he was in the sitcom Fifth Rock, or whatever.
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow. So John Lithgow was amazing. He was perfect for the role
Nice.
of the neighbor.
Nice.
And they did a great job with everything else. I just feel like the Pet Cemetery from the 80s was definitely a lot more haunting.
Yeah.
This was more of a social commentary, I feel like. And so they were trying to make too much of a point instead of actually trying to do the book right.
Wow. So another book, we touched on a little bit earlier, just real quick, that Stephen King, Thanks Ineffable, that Stephen King doesn't write just horror. One of my favorites that's not horror, but has some horrific element and all kinds of, but it's more of a high fantasy kind of thing.
Tied to the Dark Tower.
The Talisman.
Yes.
And he wrote this with Peter Straub. One of my favorites. It really, it's up there with some of the most enjoyable of my experience reading Stephen King. I was hooked into this book. I would love to do a reread of that at some point. Actually,
Straub actually is responsible for another one of my favorite horror books ever, and that was Ghost Story.
Nice.
If the movie is kind of, right. There's a lot of nostalgia for people who love that movie, but is nowhere near as brilliant as the book. And so if y'all have not read Ghost Story, I highly recommend it. It's a very haunting, beautiful story.
Nice.
Kind of brings to mind a lot of secret societies.
I see it pop up. I see it pop up on Instagram every once in a while. People love Ghost Story by Peter Straub, that's for sure.
But the Talisman was basically, it was a vehicle for the Dark Tower in many ways. Whereas most of Stephen King's books had little kind of cameos of the Dark Tower where they kind of sort of tied in, no more than actually, freaking Salem's Lot, of course.
Yeah.
But in books like, especially, and this is my favorite, Insomnia, it's a random inclusion, actually, where they're just talking in the book. And my friend Stone actually pointed this out to me.
Yeah.
There's a random part where it's conversation during the book, and all of a sudden there's a line that says, and Roland turns over, or something like that.
Nice.
And then goes back to the story.
Right.
It's like, where? And so she had to ask her dad, she goes, who the hell is Roland and why should I care in Insomnia? And he explains, how everything ties in almost that Stephen King wrote to the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk a little bit more about, I know we're running low on time.
It's all good. We can talk about whatever we want. I haven't read Insomnia, but Insomnia is called out at the end of the Dark Tower series. In the series, it's called out. I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah.
But that's one thing where I'm like, okay, well, you got to read Insomnia.
It's a hated book for some reason. I've seen so many Stephen King fans that seem to hate the book, and it's absolutely one of my favorites.
I haven't seen people hating it. I've definitely not seen people liking it, though. You know what I mean? I don't ever see
Ralph,
people like
the main character in it, is one of my favorites. I don't know. There's this whole odd couple thing going on between Ralph and his best buddy, and I don't know. It's almost as though, the relationship and it between Dunbro, what's his face, the main kid.
I don't remember.
The Hi Ho Silver Way, that, Brandis played him. Either way, the relationship between him and Beverly in that series is almost, to me, like Ralph and the other character, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, as a much like made it to their 70s or 80s kind of vibe.
Nice.
So I really enjoyed that between them. I mean, of course, very different characters. And I think something that we've kind of hinted at, but haven't really said, is, beyond all the conjecture and everything else, and everything that Stephen King throws into his novels, plot twists or whatever, explanation, what brings me back, and I think most readers, is the characters. And so if you don't hook me onto a character, you don't hook me onto the story. And I think that's where Insomnia had me, is where I love the characters so much that I was very much invested. I do get where some people, it's not their cup of tea. So much that like maybe, and I'm not sure if someone out there can help me remember the name of it. It was also turned into a made for TV series recently on Apple's network. But it's the one where it's a wife of a writer. Her husband dies, and one of his biggest fans is tasked by a professor at a school, Lizzie Story. That's the name of it.
Lizzie's Story.
Or Lizzie's Story.
Yeah, Lisey. Right. Yeah, I hear that book is really good.
It's a great book.
Nice.
And actually,
I haven't read it.
So the series is spot on. Cool. It's just, it's slow. And so I think a lot of people hated on it because of how slow it was.
Sure.
But they actually do a really good job of including, most of what the story is about into the actual show. And it's not campy, because a lot of what happens with Stephen King is whatever he ends up doing ends up campy in film.
Right.
And so that it did not suffer from that, because Lizzie's Story is not campy at all. Cool. It's very much in the same realm. What's the story? This was also, I'm sorry, we're kind of dominating this a little bit by movies, but Netflix actually did a creation of, and I can't tell you the name of the story again, but it's the one where it's a husband and wife that are trying to rekindle their love.
Yeah.
So they go out to this, cabin or whatever, or just this place near the water to spend a weekend and try and bring some of the spice back. But after he handcuffs her to the bed, he ends up having a heart attack. Gerald's Game.
Right.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be a horror fan. That movie, even though it only really takes place in the bedroom for the most part, it is a deeply engrossing film.
The book is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. So Trish is asking, with the Regulators and Desperation, which do you start with? Desperation.
Sure. Honestly, I'd never actually got to Regulators, which is a very sad admission, or omission for myself, because it's the same mythology leads into Regulators, but instead of King, it was under Bachman. So, which, did he ever explain what ended up causing one book to maybe be Stephen King and another one being Bachman?
I don't know. I have this book here that is just a book about Stephen King writing as Richard Bachman. I just picked this up a few months ago. I've never read it.
I did. Yeah, I want to.
If you want to take a look,
at some point. Yeah.
It does look cool. Quentin says he's never felt compelled to read Stephen King. Well, I mean, the thing about Stephen King is he's a character-driven writer. Once you experience Stephen King, what Stephen King does, then you will, you'll either like it or you won't. Most people do, because you like learning about other people and seeing how other people end up in situations, or how they deal with situations. And that's the kind of thing that Stephen King does. The Stand is a perfect example of a book that Stephen King did, where it's more about the characters, and the apocalypse is like the backdrop.
Exactly.
The apocalypse is not the main event.
No.
It's the characters and their relationships with each other, and how they're managing to survive in an apocalyptic situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of Stephen King is that.
Well, and a lot of Stephen King's also, especially his earlier works, are very much about redemption, and the ability for a character's past, though very rocky, that they do find themselves back in a place where they can redeem themselves from whatever wrongs were committed in their past. Or in that book, the split that takes place of either going with Mother Abigail or over to, Randall Flagg. And so, which also they just recently redid The Stand, by the way, which, okay, I got two gripes I got to bring up. Number one, it was supposed to be a movie that was written by Carrie Fuka something or another. He did one of the best seasons of True Detective. Wow. And then he said, I want to do The Stand, writes an amazing script, and then the studio comes back and says it's too brutal.
Yeah.
Even for a rated R flick, wow. So they wouldn't do it.
Right.
So it ends up becoming a miniseries rewritten for ABC. I've only seen the first episode, but I'm almost not wanting to see more.
Right.
Because they try to do this whole taking it out of order thing and trying to be artistic almost in the way that they did it. And to me, it was just awful. And so at least the first episode, not a big fan. When we come back after having read through The Green Mile, maybe I'll have actually, got the courage to finish the film.
For sure.
But I do have to mention this since it's sitting up here.
Yeah.
What kind of a mind F was this book?
Yeah, right. I haven't read it yet. My mother got me that one. She said she wanted to get me it when it first came out. And it's it's been getting, people been loving it.
It's a great,
people have been loving it, and then saying like, oh, Stephen King's back, you got to read this book. And I was like, so when she said she'd get it, I said, for sure,
it reminds me of Firestarter.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Institute by Stephen King. So I haven't started it. I haven't read it. I don't read King regularly, It's like I should do something like at least do one or two, books a year by it.
Yeah.
To keep it up like that. But as it turns out, I do that just naturally.
Yeah.
Last year I read 11/22/63, and this year I'll read The Green Mile.
Yeah.
And that'll be cool. I'm a big proponent of early Stephen King more than later, but not to disparage it. Really, the guy can do whatever, and there's gems everywhere, I'm sure.
He could do no wrong for his first 5 or 6 books. Right. You've got Carrie, you've got
Salem's Lot,
Christine,
right?
Salem's Lot, Cujo,
right?
God,
right? It's awesome. Even Cujo was made into a movie.
Yeah,
like all his first books,
which was okay. I actually prefer the movie because I remember in the book. And I'm not going to say it in case people have not read it or seen the movie, but I think all of you can agree that the ending of that book was unforgivable. Just, and just the randomness of what happens and why, because you don't know why. It doesn't seem like there's any good reason for what happened to have happened.
Right.
So, regardless, even though there was a lot of stress within the situation, but other than that, something I'm trying to think of. Now, we didn't talk a lot about the Dark Tower.
No,
and
not too much.
The Dark Tower is that's his baby.
Right,
that was
his magnum opus.
Yeah, that was. So he wasn't sure when it was going to be finished. It was one of those deals. And he had been kind of writing on it, but then putting it up, and nothing really happens until he has the accident. For those that aren't familiar, he was jogging in Maine and ends up getting hit by a truck.
Right.
And so he realizes at that moment, it's like, I need to get this out there. And so that immediately starts Wolves of the Kala, and all the iterations that ended up closing the series. I think that there was a lot of mixed reviews as far as how everything went down. Not to disparage anyone who's reading it, because I think everyone had the reasons for loving it and reasons for not. And those who did not like it, it wasn't because the whole of the series was not incredible. I think they let a few things from the last 3 books kind of bother them more than they should have. But
When you mean when he got into Wizard and Glass?
no, after Wizard and Glass. I'm talking, when he's
Wolves of Kala?
Wolves of
When
Kala,
he started Wolves of Kala?
yeah, Song of Susanna,
Right.
and the Dark Tower.
And I mean, man, I love these books.
Yeah.
And man, what I hear the most from people who are just like kind of struggling with it, but still trying to, maintain just analyzing, just exploring, they say this is getting more and more surreal as the story goes.
Yes.
By the end of it, you're in this kind of weird metafictional blended reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. The Dark Tower reality is a multiverse theory, a multiverse reality, where we're one of these realities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another one. And we actually have, unlike some realities, that there's no connective tissue.
Yeah.
There is a connective tissue between our reality and Roland's, and that's the books here. And there's this relationship there. And these characters, and fiction becomes something that has its own worlds, every bit as, vital as our world, or something like that. And so you're in a whole, it's a lot to take.
And
for a reader, if you don't read experimental fiction and stuff,
plus, the Gunslinger starts off weird.
It starts off real weird.
And I mean, because it's a combo kind of between almost an Old West feeling,
right?
But then it incorporates so many almost sci-fi elements that it kind of steps on the toes of that. And so now, don't get me wrong, I love the Gunslinger. I think it's a great story, but I've heard from so many people that it didn't grab them. And my answer is always the same: get to Drawing of the Three.
Right.
Because to this day, Drawing of the Three and then also Wizard and Glass.
Right.
Those are by far my 2 favorites.
Right.
Of
the
Drawing
of the Three is fantastic.
Incredible.
It's so many people's favorite.
Yeah.
And I love, but I mean, I mean, I could talk about I love about all the different ones. Right?
Was Wizard and Glass not your favorite though? I thought
Wizard and Glass is great. I would say my favorite is Song of Suzanne.
Really?
Which is like nobody's favorite. I don't know. I
love them all.
I went to a convention, like the Comic Con, a Dragon Con or something here in Atlanta, and there was this forum where everybody was talking Dark Tower and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, raise your hand if the first book is your favorite book. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll wait until they say the 5th book, Song of Suzanne. The 6th book, Song of Susanna, right? And when it did it, I was the only person with my hand. I was like, seriously, right now? I loved it. I love how Stephen King breaks how he fixed Detta Odetta. And then Susanna becomes, and then he breaks Susanna, and there's Susanna Mia, and it's such just a total trip, and the baby and the kid, and how the kid comes into this, Roland's son, and I'm not gonna say much anymore, because I know we have people that haven't finished the series, but when that kind of things happen. In that part of the book, I was like elevated, where this isn't just Stephen King playing around, like writing a story like he normally does. This is him writing like an immortal story. Like he's seeing if he can do something to stop him from being able to write the story. There's so many traps in the Dark Tower series where it seems like storytelling wise, he paints himself into a corner and then he gets out, and then we see the characters get out, and it just breaks the novel as being a separate thing from our reading experience of it, and Stephen King as being the writer of it.
I think that attributes a lot back to feeding back into On Writing,
Right.
where he explains. I mean, I think one of the biggest things he says is don't write the story. Let the story write itself. You know, let it do its speaking. Don't throw a story in a direction that it's not meant to go just because you think it sounds cool. If it doesn't, if you don't have the feel for it, if it doesn't feel like those characters are going that direction, no matter how much you love a plot device,
Right.
don't go there.
Right.
Because it's almost like, you know, my history before, you know, writing, I was a theater person. And in theater, it was always in acting. Don't, if your character will let you know if you're being dishonest on stage.
Right.
Because if anything ends up awkward or feeling weird
Yeah.
in the way that you do it, you already know the character's telling you don't do that.
Right.
And
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go down.
And I think in writing, the same thing comes across,
Sure.
where I'm very much in my way of writing, I'm a stream of consciousness person. So I just sit down with an idea and I flow. And that's usually what I end up with. But, you know, though I might have a cool idea with where I think a story is going to go, if at the time to pull the trigger, the story is dragging me in another direction, it doesn't matter how much I'm connected to that outcome. The story is telling me something different.
Yeah.
And so
you got to go with it. You got to go with it. Stephen King's On Writing is the best.
Mhm.
I mean, it's an amazing book on writing. Read it.
Yeah.
I mean, I if there's a Stephen King book that I can recommend higher than, you know, the highest one to recommend,
Mhm.
this is what I'm going for.
Especially for
board,
writers.
Everybody, you know, but especially for writers, for
Mhm.
sure. It's great. And thank you very much, BookTube. We're over an hour. I'm gonna cut it because me and Arrona, sorry, got some hanging out to do.
Yeah.
We're gonna watch a movie about music.
So Almost Famous is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I told him if he had never seen the uncut version by, you know, Cameron Crowe, that's necessity, because it is, to me, perfection of what Almost Famous is.
Right.
You know, more perfect than the 2 hour one. It's
Nice.
not, it's like 2 hours, 45 minutes. So,
Nice.
yeah.
I can't wait. I love it. It'll be incendiary.
It will be incendiary.
That's for sure. All right.
And I hope this was incendiary.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out.
Yeah.
Killing another Friday night. Give me an hour. I give you an hour. We all hang out, talk books, all that kind of stuff. Hope you enjoyed the Stephen King. Drop me a line. Anybody who watches it after, drop me a comment. We'll keep a conversation going in the box. Thank you, Arrona, for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you for welcoming me into your homes, and hopefully I didn't break any cameras or laptops with my appearance.
Right. All right. Rock on, BookTube. Thank you very much.